Once upon a time, there was a farmer named Daniel. He had once been very rich and owned a large farm. However, he had not been careful with managing his wealth. He spent his money on things he didn't need, made poor decisions, and didn't think ahead for the future. Over time, his wealth began to disappear, and soon he lost everything: his land, his animals, and all his money were gone. He found himself living in a tiny house that was more like a shack. It had cracks in the walls, and no matter how much they tried to fix it, they couldn't keep out the cold. The roof leaked, and whenever it rained, water poured inside. Life had become a constant struggle for Daniel and his wife Amelia. They used to have everything they needed, but now they were poor and had to do without. Daniel and Amelia had always wanted a child, but when they were rich, they never had one. They prayed for a child every day, hoping that their dream would come true. But no matter how much they asked, God did not bless them with a baby. Now, they were poor and had nothing, and just when they thought things couldn't get worse, something wonderful happened. Amelia found out she was going to have a baby. The news filled their hearts with joy, but also with fear. They had no money, no food, and nowhere to turn. How would they care for a baby when they could barely take care of themselves? Amelia cried, "What are we going to do, Daniel? We don't even have food for ourselves, and now we have a baby to take care of." But Daniel, who had always been a hopeful man, smiled and said, "We will find a way. This child is a gift from God, and God will help us." He took a deep breath and then said, "First, we need to have the baby christened. We must find someone to be the godmother." They didn't have any relatives nearby, so Daniel went to ask their neighbor, hoping that she would agree to be their daughter's godmother. However, the neighbor, who was also poor, looked at him with cold eyes and said, "Why should I help you? My husband and I are struggling just like you. We have enough worries of our own. Why should we take on yours?" Daniel left, disappointed but not defeated. He returned home to tell his wife the bad news. Amelia, though sad, did not give up hope. "When we were rich," she said, "everyone wanted to be around us. The mayor even invited us to his house. But now that we are poor, not even a neighbor will help us." They were worried, but Daniel promised her that they would find someone to help. They could not give up on their dreams for their baby. As winter dragged on, the cold became unbearable. The snow covered everything outside, and the ground was hard with frost. Amelia and Daniel had no proper clothes for the baby. The baby's bed was made of cold, hard ground, and Amelia would cry as she looked at her little one, wishing she could do more. One day, a thought came to Amelia, and she told Daniel to go and ask the mayor's wife to be their child's godmother. After all, the mayor's wife had been kind to them when they were wealthy, and surely she would help now. Daniel wasn't so sure, but he agreed to try. He dressed warmly and set out to the mayor's house. It was a long walk, and as he walked past the fields and farm buildings that used to be his, he felt a deep sense of loss. When he arrived, he explained to the mayor's wife what had happened to them, and asked if she would be willing to be their baby's godmother. The mayor's wife looked at him with disdain and said, "Why are you asking me for help? Everyone is struggling right now, and I can barely afford to help my own family, let alone someone as poor as you. Why don't you ask someone else?" Daniel, heartbroken, returned home and told Amelia what had happened. She was sad, but Daniel was determined. "I will not give up," he said. "I will take our baby to the church for christening myself. I'll ask the first person I meet on the road to be the godmother." He kissed Amelia and their baby goodbye, and, with his heart full of hope, he set out on his journey. As Daniel walked, he thought about everything that had happened to them. His heart ached, but he knew that he had to be strong for his wife and their child. After several hours of walking, Daniel saw an old woman who was walking slowly, with a bent back and tattered clothes. She was clearly poor, but her face was kind. He approached her and explained their situation, asking if she would be willing to be their baby's godmother. The old woman smiled warmly and said, "Of course I will. It would be an honor to be the godmother of your child. You love her so much, and that is all that matters." Daniel felt a wave of relief wash over him. With the old woman by his side, they walked together to the church. When they arrived, the priest was about to leave for the day, but his assistant stopped him and told him that Daniel and the old woman had arrived. "Oh, not now," said the priest. "Who is it, and what do they want at this hour?" The assistant replied, "It's Daniel, the man who lost everything. He is very poor now." As they entered the church, the old woman noticed that the assistant was whispering something unkind to the priest. But the old woman was calm. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a golden coin. She pressed it into the priest's hand, and his eyes widened in surprise. He quickly whispered to the assistant to prepare for the christening. The ceremony went on, and it was as if they were in a grand hall with rich decorations. The little girl was given the name Eliza. After the christening, the priest and the assistant walked with Daniel, the old woman, and the baby to the door of the church. At the gate, the old woman reached into her pocket again and pulled out another golden coin. She handed it to Daniel and said, "This is my gift to your child. It will be enough to raise her well and give her everything she needs. This child will bring you happiness and comfort." Then, with a smile, the old woman vanished into the air. Daniel stood there, amazed. He looked down at the golden coin in his hand, and when he checked the baby's blanket, he found that it had become 10 coins. They scattered on the ground as if by magic. Daniel, in shock, gathered them up and put them in his pockets. He ran home, excited, thinking about what had just happened. When he got home, Amelia was waiting for him, cold and hungry. She was surprised when Daniel entered with a smile on his face. He told her everything that had happened and asked her to take the gift from the blanket. When she did, she pulled out 10 golden coins, and they kept multiplying, spreading all over the floor. Amelia screamed with joy as she watched the coins grow. But then a thought crossed her mind. Could this money be cursed? She wondered if the old woman was a spirit trying to buy their souls. Daniel laughed and said, "Don't be silly, Amelia. No spirit would go into a church." But he, too, had a sense that this was something extraordinary. He told Amelia they must keep their secret and not tell anyone about the mysterious gift. The next day, Daniel went to the mayor to exchange a coin so that he could buy food for his family. When he returned, he also bought fresh milk, eggs, bread, and a few cakes. He even bought new beds for the family. Amelia was overwhelmed with joy. Later, the mayor's wife came to visit, curious to know how Daniel and Amelia had become so wealthy overnight. Amelia smiled and told her that the godmother had given them the money they needed to start over. The mayor's wife didn't suspect anything, and Amelia kept their secret. Daniel, on the other hand, took care of the land, the animals, and the farm like never before. He worked hard to rebuild their life, and soon their farm became the most prosperous one in the region. They had everything they needed, and they shared their blessings with others. Eliza grew up to be a kind and beautiful woman. Her parents were overjoyed, and when she reached the right age, a wealthy prince fell in love with her and asked her to marry him. Eliza and the prince lived happily ever after. Daniel and Amelia grew old, surrounded by their success and the love of their daughter. And so, the once poor couple became respected members of their community. They lived happily, always remembering the kindness of the mysterious godmother who had changed their lives forever.